One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
Well, it's a very long story, and it's rather difficult to explain it, but I suppose it all begins when Bilbo finds a magic ring. Well, he doesn't exactly find it. He sort of takes it from Gollum, who lives underground. And then he takes it back to the Shire, where all the hobbits live, because Bilbo's a hobbit.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
Hobbits were small creatures, about 3 foot high.
4 foot high, curly hair between toes. and the sort of person who enjoys 5 meals a day.
I've never seen anything more bourgeois in their life. They seem to spend the whole time sitting around eating meals, playing all various sort of bar billiards and that sort of thing.
They like leading unadventurous lives, having plenty to eat, and being sure of coming back to their nice warm hobbit holes and having friends to tea.
They're not a kind of people given to great adventure or to thought.
But some members of the hobbit race have a strain in them which they don't really like to admit to, which is rather adventurous. And so occasionally hobbits go out on wild adventures.
It's finally the old basic thing which must have occurred often in literature, the reluctant hero. And the story, in essence, is the adventures of this little chap. Then, of course, you move out into the wilder world where the imagination can be let go.
The world that Tolkien has created is a world of myth and magic, as well as a world of strange creatures.
The actual beginning, though it's not really the beginning, but the actual flashpoint was, I remember very clearly. I can still see the corner in my house in 20 Northmoor Road where it happened. I got an enormous pile of exam papers there, and marking school examinations in the summertime is an enormous, very laborious, and unfortunately also boring. And I remember picking up a paper and actually finding. I nearly gave an extra mark for it, extra 5 marks, actually. There was one page on this particular paper was left blank. Glorious. Nothing to read, so I scribbled on it. I can't think why. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. I think that was eventually published in 1937. I now wanted to try my hand at writing a really stupendously long narrative and to see whether I had sufficient art, cunning, or material to make a really long narrative which would hold the average reader right through. The best, one of the best forms for a long narrative is as was found in The Hobbit, though there's a much more elaborate form, of the pilgrimage on journey with an object. So that was inevitably the form I adopted.
Frodo began to feel restless, and the old paths seemed too well trodden. He looked at maps and wondered what lay beyond their edges. He took to wandering further afield, and more often by himself. He used often to say there was only one road, that it was like a great river. Its springs were at every doorstep, and every path was its tributary.
Well, they have lots of adventures, and they make friends with a lot of very interesting and influential elves, who are very important people in that part of the world. But finally, they're attacked by the orcs, these horrible sort of goblin creatures.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am the verger of Merton College. Welcome to the college. I understand you wish to see know all about the college and also the old medieval library. The college itself is the oldest college in Oxford, founded by Wharton.
This was all blocked. Of two very English and extremely British parents. That old arms they don't repair because I think there's so much traffic. I think it was a kind of double coming home, which made the effect of the ordinary English meadows, countryside, breaks so immensely important to me. I was, on the whole, a rather puny, over-mothered, timid, a little creature who was not much of a success. I eventually became a fairly ordinary scholar. Turned out to be good at rugby football, of all odd things. Let me say at once that owing to the casualties in the war and various other things, there are very few people to elect. Too big a job for me, really. Which means to say that I was legally removed. It's a pity it couldn't be in the springtime when that tree that wouldn't look sad, but covered with leaves, you see. Look old but not sad. And these that looks like kind of plain, doesn't it, something? Whatever that tree is, and these are limes. But all the limes have such a, however old they are, they're lovely green in spring. I have always, for some reason, I don't know why, been enormously attracted by trees. All my works is full of trees. I suppose I have actually, in some simple-minded form of longing, actually would like to. I should have liked to be able to make contact with a tree and find out what it feels about things. The old ent says a few things, doesn't it, about feeling the sap run up and the opening to the sun. Trees, and a lot of trees have gone, big trees from there, you see. It was much more woody, and there was a long line of trees, this kind only younger, all along the wall, so those houses couldn't see you and you couldn't see them when they were in leaf. Yes. It was a much more secluded garden.
They chained the scholars instead of the books. I said, you'll pardon me, madam, been very foolish of them. She said, why? I said, our scholars come and go. Our books must remain with us. She said, thank you very much. I said, it is my pleasure. There was
that's dreadful. The cans were all togged up. I've never seen them so tidy.
It seems to me that there is an air of what I would call donnish pastime about all Tolkien's works.
Can't get out. There's a great damn thing in the way. I'll try and climb up, one minute. Well, hello, chap, what are you doing down there?
Oh, that's the entrance to the office at the bottom. Above it, you have the Queen's room, where Queen Henrietta. So it's actually the office, of course, is to do with the estates office, you know, where they deal with all the estates belonging to the college. I see. And here's the bursar just coming across.
He's very helpful.
Yeah. And there, through the door, their sharp right, of course, is the State's office. Quite a modern little fellow.
It's a pity the book didn't catch on a bit sooner, isn't it?
Tolkien is, I suppose if you have to put Tolkien in a category, you class him with those other Oxford dons, Lewis Carroll at Christ Church and C.S. Lewis, who both of them created sort of fantasy worlds in much the same way. There was Lewis Carroll's Wonderland and C.S. Lewis's Narnia. they were slightly different. They were less substantial than Middle-earth, Tolkien's Hobbit land.
In this world, Tolkien has placed different countries, different races, different languages, and he has given it all a sense, gives the reader a sense of solidity.
Because Tolkien remained very much a scholar when he wrote his book.
He's never scientific. Even mountains are described by the way they think, which is not a precisely modern idea.
In fact, he's not writing in the science fiction genre, is he? It's more like a glorified fairy story.
Well, I think it's a very basic appeal, because everybody likes a fantasy. They like to escape from life when it becomes dull and boring. And you can get this kind of escape through detective thrillers and science fiction stories and spy stories. But you always come back to the real world, thinking that it's even duller and more boring than it was before. And you think, you know, I wish I was the first man on the moon, or I wish I was a spy instead of leading the kind of life I'm leading. Whereas when you finish reading The Lord of the Rings, not only have you had a marvellous adventure story and a marvellous fantasy, but some of the magic has rubbed off on the ordinary, very homely things of life, like a good meal.
Like food, there's a great joy in food.
Food? Never been a trencherman. I admire trenchermen, therefore I make... But I like, I must say, since England produces the best basic food in Europe, on the whole, it does.
And drink, the fact that there are pubs in Middle-earth.
Yes, I drink things these days. I like, of course, feeling elevated, but I'm very fond of beer.
They were washed, and in the middle of good deep mugs of beer, when Mr. Butterbur and Nob came in again. In a twinkling, the table was laid. There was hot soup, cold meats, a blackberry tart, new loaves, slabs of butter, and half a ripe cheese. Good plain food, as good as the Shah could show.
And stuff like tobacco.
I've always smoked. I sometimes smoke beyond the point when you enjoy it, which is silly, but I do smoke and enjoy it, and as a matter of fact, it's now so tied to writing that I can't write without it.
All these are sort of homely, pleasant things, and it's the sort of basis of things homely in the Shire that makes the big expansion into romantic wildernesses so much more exciting.
The fireworks were by Gandalf. They were not only brought by him, but designed and made by him. And the special effects, set pieces and flights of rockets were let off by him.
That's a good one. You've got to hide that in there.
There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds, singing with sweet voices. There were trees with trunks of dark smoke, and their shiny branches dropped glowing flowers down upon the astonished hobbits, disappearing with a sweet scent just before they touched their upturned faces. That is the signal for supper, said Bilbo.
Hey! I think the important thing when one reads Tolkien's works is not to let this pretty fairy tale lead one into accepting the basically reactionary doctrine that lies underneath it all. I mean, conservatism is quite all right when it's based on something, but his sort of conservatism, that is the West, Numenor, the dwarves, elves, etc., is based on absolutely nothing at all. I mean, you can't escape into the world, because into the Middle-earth, because he's very cleverly incorporated the features of our world that he most dislikes in it. I mean, if you're looking in Tolkien for a sort of pastoral paradise, you won't find it, because all the time there's this menace of Sauron lurking in the east, represented as ugly, dark, black, toiling, living in holes in the mountains. Well, these people are obviously the proletarian masses trying to achieve a revolution in a basically feudal society.
No, I don't at all like Tolkien or what he stands for. seems to me that his work implies an escape from political and social reality. Now, this seems to me is reprehensible. It's an implication of triviality, it's an implication of regression, a refusal to face up to our political and social problems, our religious problems of today. And the cult of The Hobbit, the cult of Tolkien in America particularly, seems to be responding to this sort of failure in engagement with our political and social situation.
The trouble is, of course, they make it sound like an intellectualized Dr. Dolittle. And no doubt before very long we'll have Lord of the Rings on ice with Millicent Martin and Margaret Rutherford. But it will become a cult, as it is a cult in America now, where the constant symbol is seen, Frodo lives.
I don't live in America. Surely they should tell me. I should like to ask them some questions of how such things arise. I observe in general that North America has always been much more easily kindled than England, or indeed any country in Europe. And for instance, the Dickens cult and the extraordinary excitement about Dickens. So the only people who came down at the quay to watch the mail ship coming, the only thing they wanted to know is what happened to the next chapter. They weren't worried about goods.
It gives you a nice sort of in-feeling to meet another Tolkien enthusiast who will know when you make references to things in the story, as though you're referring to history.
As we do in Spectacle.
Exactly, yes. The obscurer the reference, the better you feel when somebody else gets it.
The vast number, as I can judge from my very considerable fan mail, I should say that only a small proportion I possess, and even of those, not very many have really read the books with any attention.
Well, I, of course, haven't actually read Tolkien, but I think it's marvellous. As if I go to a cocktail party or something like this, and spent 20 intensely boring minutes talking to a secretary about her father's foot and mouth on the farm. I then ask her, have you read Tolkien? And they always have. And they give you the plot for the next half hour.
And they eventually get to the land of Mordor, Sauron's country, carrying the ring.
I think perhaps when he started off writing Lord of the Rings, as he's a philologist and an academic, he was most interested in the language. But the world that he created to hold the language took him over.
I first began seriously to invent languages about when I was 13 or 14. I've never stopped, really. Languages have a flavour to me, which I never understand people saying, for instance, it was awfully dry and dull, because a new language to me is just like taking a new wine or a new sweetmeat or something. What I'm doing now is to try and write in Elvish, which my writing is very inferior to the Elv. Their standard greeting when meeting, a star shines upon our meeting. Oh, God. I made a mistake, didn't I? And that stands for Ellen, Sila, Lumen, Aumenti Elvo. It's a rather beautiful language, I think.
Well, some people seem to sort of take a delight in being able to sort of think in Elvish, which seems a little odd.
No. I wouldn't mind other people knowing it and enjoying it. But I didn't really want to, like some people who've been equally inventive in language have done, sort of make cults and have people all speaking it together. No, I don't desire to go and have afternoons talking Elvish to chaps. One thing, of course, Elvish is too complicated. I've never finished making it.
And they travel on in this sort of dark, horrible place.
It's impossible to give the story, any story that's worthwhile in a couple of sentences.
And they eventually come to Mount Doom.
I suppose that it's escapist in a way.
Well, it is meant to be escapist, because I use escapism in its proper sense. It was a man getting out of prison.
I don't think one has to say it's an allegory.
People do not fully understand the difference between an allegory and an application. You can go to a Shakespeare play and you can apply it to things in your mind if you like, but they're not allegories. At least most of them are not. There's more allegorical elements, for instance, in the Tempest than in most, but certainly, I mean, many people apply to nuclear, the ring, to particularly the nuclear bomb, don't they? I think that was in my mind, the whole thing is only an allegory of it. Well, it isn't.
No other book has frightened me quite as much as that. I've never had such an intense sense of evil.
One reviewer once said, this is a jolly, jolly book, isn't it? All the right boys come home and they're always happy and glad. It isn't true, of course. He can't have read the story.
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. 1 ring...
Ashnazga Gimbatul, Ashnazga Thrakatuluk, Ach Burzumishek.
To rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
I invented that in a bath, I remember. Yes, I remember inventing that in one of the baths in 29 when I was having a bath in 20 North Row. I still remember kicking the sponge out of the bath when I got the last time, thinking that will do, all right, and jumped out.
He and Sam set off back to the Shire where all the hobbits come from.
Tolkien uses the ordinary things that people are afraid of, and he's built up these fears into an immense evil atmosphere.
If you really come down to any large story, it interests people, can hold them attention for a considerable time, or make stories, practically always, a human story is practically always about one thing, aren't they? Death. The inevitability of death. I don't know, would you agree with that? But anyway, that is what, there was a quotation from Simon Beauvoir that I read in the paper the other day, which seems to me put it in a nutshell. I think I'll read it. It was apropos of the untimely death of a musical composer whom I've myself always been extremely fond, Carl Maria Weber, who died 39 of tuberculosis. And the man who written his biography actually quotes these words of Simon: "There is no such thing as a natural death. Nothing that happens to man is ever natural, since his presence calls the whole world into question. All men must die, but for every man his death is an accident, and even if he knows it and consents to it, an unjustifiable violation." Well, you may agree with the words or not, but those are the key spring of the laws of the ring.
The third age was my age. I was the enemy of Sauron, and my work is finished. The burden must lie now upon you and your kindred. And the power of the 3 rings also is ended. And all the lands that you see, and those that lie round about them, shall be dwellings of men. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule.
Not Fania